next, allow me to introduce our next sections and the speakers joining us today. Leading the panel discussion is Dr. Andres Hauser, Managing Director of Digital Services at TÜV Asia Pacific, based in Singapore. And joining him is our panelist, Mr. Grisada Uttamod, President of the Electric Vehicle Association of Thailand, or EVAT, followed by Mr. Sakda Sarapat Vitya, Vice President of the Thai Automation and Robotics Association, or TARA. Then again, Dr. Rachani Kullayanon, Executive Vice President of KMITL Research and Innovation Service. And last but not least, Ms. Lin Lee, Director of Botrium Systems Singapore and member of the Association of Electronic Industry in Singapore. The last, Mr. Somboon Anantatanasan, Head of Software Business at Siemens Thailand. With that, I'm pleased to hand the proceedings over to you, Dr. Hauser.
Thank you very much, Nupta. Also, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Warm welcome from my side. So it's my honor to moderate this plenary session with the distinguished panelists you already introduced. So I don't have to do that. That's very good. So we can jump directly into the topic. What we have heard so far from the keynote speakers and also from the introduction, that we see definitely opportunities here of bringing in new technologies in the context of Industry 4.0 despite the pandemic, or let's put it that way, it has two sides. One side is that there are opportunities, new opportunities has been created to bring in new technologies. We have heard deployment of robots in hospitals, for instance, right? Production of medical products has definitely boomed as well to a certain degree. On the other hand, we see lockdowns, shutdowns. We see that some segments are highly disrupted, really struggling. So there's really this very strong, let's say, polarized world in more successful, let's say, segments and really strongly impacted ones, like we already mentioned, the automotive sector. I will not give you a long monologue about Industry 4.0, but just to highlight a few things, a few observations maybe, and then come directly into the discussion here. As you know, in 2011, this phrase or this term has been coined in Germany, 2011, on the Hanover Fair, and now it's 10 years later. We have seen a lot of ups and downs somehow, yeah? From pure concepts and ideas and wishes and hopes and visions rather than facts. But as we go along these years, we see also serious adoption, serious implementation of Industry 4.0 solutions. And also there's, we also can observe that those companies who have already reached a certain maturity level in their digitalization efforts fared rather better through the pandemic than others, simply because you are more agile, right? If you have more streamlined processes, digitalized processes, integrated systems, you can react to certain incidents better, or events like a disruption of the supply chain. So we see definitely that it helps. But there was also one comment from a CEO from a rather big MNC company who said, Naya, you can do a lot of digitalization, but if the demand is not there because simply shut down or consumer are not buying, then you can be as digitalized as you want, but it doesn't help. Coming now back a bit to Thailand itself. Well, Thailand has been hit also hard, as almost all of the manufacturing hubs worldwide. So this is not a specific situation, but we want to now dive a bit deeper into the Thai market, specifically around the question How did Thailand fare in this pandemic, specifically across the segments, maybe also in comparison to other countries? We also would like to explore the question, well, what are the challenges moving forward? We heard we want to climb up the value chain, right? Local value creation is a key topic. So what are the challenges to get there? And the third questions we would like to elaborate further is now the Industry 4.0 topic. How does that play into the picture? We still see that Industry 4.0 is considered as a nice to have, something you may do or not. But ultimately it is the way we will manufacture in the future, and it's not an option somehow, and how that is being, let's say, taken into the picture in Thailand specifically. So let me now start with the first question: how really Thailand fared in this pandemic specifically. So would like to ask first Mr. Krista, from has a strong understanding from the EV market. Can you share a bit how this specific market you are acting in fared in the last, let's say, 12 to 18 months? Would be great to hear from your insights. Thank you.
Sure, Andreas, thank you for the questions. And actually, it is a pleasure for me to be here and speaking on behalf of the Electric Vehicle Association of Thailand. So as some of you have already seen the news, we actually quite surprised to see that the electric vehicle market in Thailand actually climbed up when compared to the year before. And actually, when we kind of trace it back to around 2019, we noticed that the total number of electric vehicle sales in Thailand jumped by 380% from 2018, just because we have one brand, MG ZSEV, with the price close to 1 million. And from there, we see the growth every year in Thailand market. Even in the first 6 months of this year, we still see the growth of the electric vehicle registration. And that is a good sign to see that we still have the quite a substantial growth from this technology in the Thai market. But keeping in mind that the overall situation of the automotive industry globally, we are facing the situation where the semiconductor is shortage, and therefore one of the problems for most of the car manufacturers right now is to keep up with the shortage of the semiconductor, because you can probably have all the components, but you wouldn't be able to finish the car on the assembly line if you don't have one small chip to operate, different parts of the cars. And this is one of the things that we have to keep in mind, that in the future, in the electric vehicle, we're going to use more and more of the semiconductors. And this one would be probably one of the key issues that we need to think ahead, how Thailand and how the supplier globally would be able to keep up with the rising demand of the semiconductor.
You mentioned, yes, semiconductor as kind of a bottleneck for the production. Do you also see on the demand side any drop or any change, let's say? Is there any impact from the pandemic on the demand side?
I think on the demand side, we noticed that since the pandemic hit us, we all have to use computer a lot more. We work from home a lot more, and that caused all the electrical appliance and all components to sales to rise. So anything that you would need to be able to work from home, computer would need to would need the semiconductor in the production, and therefore it is in a great demand, for all the mobile devices, from mobile phone to cars to computer, and therefore I still see the trend to still rise in the coming years.
Okay, interesting. Turning now to Dr. Lur, maybe. Thanks for this great keynote. Very interesting insights. I saw more of an opportunity, to be honest, rather than a challenge. Rather than basically it has been strongly disrupted. I mean, medical sector generally, we see a strong boost in the last 12 to 18 months in many regards. Maybe can you share a bit, where do you see an impact of the pandemic, in the sense that where maybe some issues came up, some shortcomings, or some negative aspects?
Yeah, thank you very much. So during this pandemic, we really see opportunities much more than the challenges. That's definitely true. And one thing that we realized is that a lot of research teams, and I'm not talking about just my university, many universities and including companies, they have been working rigorously to create these new kind of innovations to deliver to Thailand. And thanks to this pandemic, really, is that it's a really good opportunities where Thai manufacturers can actually prove themselves that they have, the standard that compare to a lot of the devices that were manufactured and imported. And at the same time, like Kun Grisada said, semiconductors is also a challenge for this MedTech industry as well. We have to still import a lot of these sensors and medical graded devices. So in a whole, this pandemic has created a much more confidence in innovations and manufacturers in Thailand. At the same time, we realize there are still issues that we need to address. So for example, regulations, that's for sure. That's something that the government are currently, from my understanding, they are currently slowly working on the sandbox for the COVID-19 outbreak emergency situation. And hopefully that could also bring to the future regulation development as well. And another thing that I also would like to address here is that when we are importing these devices, it's tax-free. But when we are importing components of these devices, it's taxed. So how can the government create this regulation to make the prices compatible, especially for the manufacturers? And then the manufacturers here in Thailand, from my experience in the past 2 years, we went to a lot of their factories. They have the capability. They have IoT, Industry 4.0 really help with a lot of these manufacturing process to expedite them and be able to keep up with their current progress. And they have the capability to do so if we gave them a chance, the opportunity. So yeah, thank you.
Okay, very, very interesting. So generally from an innovation side, rather positive, right? It's really an opportunity. Correct. To push new innovation or innovations, but the regulatory portion is really kind of a preventing element here.
Challenge. Yes.
Yes, we know regulators are not the fastest typically, so it's not a surprise, but it's also a wake-up call to move here also fast, right? Mr. Samboon, you as let's say involved in particularly software business, right, from Siemens, also as a technology provider across sectors, can you share a bit your view how this pandemic impacted maybe several sectors? Yes. And can also compare them?
Yes, okay. Actually, we can see that the Industry 4.0 direction is come before the pandemic, the COVID-19 pandemic come. Before end of 2019, we can see that many customer, many manufacturers can see that the consumer change their behavior very fast, and they have their need individually. Then how the manufacturer can capture the changing and can support or provide the product that match with the customer requirement. When the COVID-19 pandemic come in end of 2019, it show more that the manufacturer have to adapt themselves to the change that faster and faster. Some product that is very good to build in the past via airplane cannot build anymore because no demand, but the medical device is more and more requirement. Then how the manufacturer can adapt themselves to change from produce something to the new thing that match to the market. This show to many of our customer, I mean manufacturer, that think about this, how to have more automation in their factory, how to make their factory flexible, more flexible to change from produce one thing to the new thing. And this lead to many customers come to talk to Siemens, for example, that how they can adapt their factory to be met with this changing, fast changing. Yeah. Then not only automation, but digitalization is one of the important thing that the manufacturer seeing, that how they can produce or design the new product on time to the market faster, how they can prepare their production line to produce the new thing, and also how they can track, because if the thing that they produce changing really fast, the quality is still important, efficiency is still important, that how they can build a new thing, still maintain the good quality and the good efficiency to make them still gain the profit from their production. Yeah, we can see something like that move faster after the COVID situation getting better, that the customer can have the more SI or more vendor come to visit their company and doing something to improve their factory.
What about these, very basic and practical issues that because of the pandemic, you cannot meet in person, you cannot go on site, you cannot have this exchange you typically have before you build new business, implement new technologies. Is that an issue somehow, or is it more a secondary problem?
Yeah, something we can do remotely. For example, if we will not build a new thing, but just improve something, especially by software, we can do remotely for implementation. But if we need to go to the customer side, Siemens also still can support the customer that with the healthy criteria, we still can visit the customer. But yeah, as you mentioned, is maybe slower than the normal situation.
Mm. Okay, thank you. Ms. Lin, maybe question to you, working in a company with, high tech, yeah, we talk about computing and edge computing and computing vision. How did this kind of specific, let's say, segment fare through the pandemic, also compared maybe to others? Can you share something here, please?
Right. Okay. So since 2019, the pandemic has forced many of us to work from home. So in Singapore, in Malaysia, so that directly impacted in the demand of computing products, I guess. And unfortunately, that's semiconductor, it has been affected as well. So it's like a, can I say it's like a double lose versus a double win kind of scenario. So, and we see that for people who have actually embraced technology as a daily affair, we find it kind of slightly easier to work remotely. But for people who are actually more focused on human labor, on hands-on, these are the people that tends to feel the first-hand impact from this pandemic. So I think there's this joke that's happening around that says, you can push digitalization, computerization, all you can, and no one push it faster than COVID-19. So
yeah, absolutely. I mean, it looks really like this is a kind of a booster for already, let's say, launch initiatives many years ago, right? And now it's kind of, okay, we have to really seriously do this, and the acceptance is simply higher to do remote sessions, to also control from remote. So these kind of things are definitely more, or let's say, see a bit bigger acceptance here, yeah.
right. Yeah. Okay.
And you're sitting in Singapore, is that correct?
Yes. Singapore.
Yeah. So that's also already one indication, right, that we are more and more flexible where we sit physically rather than where we do the business naturally.
Yeah. And for this year, we see also the shift from from cloud computing to also this increased demand for edge computing, where we try to be more efficient. And I'm sure Dr. Sakda would see that as well, from the kind of a shift from cloud computing towards more takers for edge computing, where data is collected and decisions are made right on the edge. So this is a trend that I foresee will have to pick up as well to keep our businesses more resilient.
And you mentioned, I mean, those clients or customers or companies who are already kind of digitalized to a certain degree or used to these kind of new technologies there, of course, it's easier to basically further implement new solutions. But what about new customers, new companies who want to jump on that, want to further digitalize and asking for your solution? How do you practically then do that sitting in Singapore and there's a manufacturer in Thailand?
I think like Singapore, Thailand also has some people like Dr. Le, Dr. Sakda, who have been very positively and strongly pushing these new practices and best practices. So I think kind of work in the same way as well. So companies and big factories and universities and research people have been trying to work very hard to push this new technology together. So I foresee this is something that needs to be done in a greater effort, more collective effort, and we definitely need more support from our countries per se, from our governments. So yeah, this message is for all of us right there.
Yes, it's also about the network, the let's say collaboration of industry, research, development, but also government. But we heard the regulator topic as well. Maybe now coming to Mr. Sakda, thanks for this keynote about robots and automation. You also showed that there are more opportunities basically deploying robots in hospitals and so on and so forth. Can you share a bit more about the impact on your specific sector? You have a good overview, I guess.
Yeah, okay, thank you. And we would like to share you for more the collaboration from Tara, and also we have the not just only for the private company that collaboration together, but we also can have the collaboration and coordinate with the government organization we call like EEC, Eastern Economic Corridor, that we are very close linked. And this organization that is very strong, and we have the information, interesting one that I would like to share to you by today. A part of the commercial bank, they have the summary report that in the past 5 years before COVID, from 2016 until 2019, a part of the automation and robotic industrial in Thailand, they are slightly growing up around 2% per year. That means the growth 5 years ago. And after COVID, since March 2020, this growth up for the automation and robotics is around 7% compared with 5 years. And after that, by this year, 5 months, this is the big jump to be 40% compared with in the same time in the past 2020. This is quite interesting figure that a part of the robotic and automation still be in the positioning that can help and release for the pandemic situation. Okay, a part of the sector that robotic and automation come to is a sector of the automotive, also electronic, and also food, and a part of the food supply chain as well. And one more information for the sector, that is the healthcare, even for the industrial 4.0, also smart factory. Right now, the position of the government, they would like to have the field hospital, not only in the government take care, but they also will have the home isolation, community isolation, even for factory isolation. All of those, if you can review it, is something like a small factory inside a factory. That means they really need for devices, they really need electronic, they really need for the automate, they really need digitalize. That means this point is still more important to support and be the backup and support team for the business and smart factory or industrial 4.0. Include that also for the data center, even for the integrated operation center by the factory and also the community, even for the industrial estate, and go to for the centralized if required by the government. And the last point that is also important, that is a part of the digital, even for the automation staff, that the report of the future of job for the world economy. In Thailand, they have 55% for the manpower that have skill for the digital and automation. We need to wrap up, we need to build, we need to raise up for this. And one of the Thara organization and association can help to have the training session and have the team, have the skill, have the consult also to support. And the last one that is also very important, that board of investment also encourage the factory that try to invest for the robot and automation with the very interesting package, like 100% of the investment in automation and robot association and robotic system. If you invest and this factory is in line with the BOI regulation, that is very important for this, that we would like to share as a part of the Thara view for this.
That's good transition point to now, let's say, discuss a bit, think about how to move forward, right? How the way forward could look like to really foster and support the adoption of new solutions further. Maybe Mr. Sakta, because you mentioned that in your presentation, this Thailand 4.0 concept, right? Or this Thailand 4.0, can you just briefly explain a bit more how this is being implemented? And you mentioned also investment, which is definitely a very important aspect, I think, in this whole context. But can you share a bit more about this concept and how this is being implemented in Thailand?
Okay, I can share you one more example, very short one, that, okay, at the beginning, the factory owner, they would like to looking about how can the factory more flexibility and how can align for the production like a mass production and can be monitored, can be tracked. First, we go through as a part of the consult, and we will site visit them, and we will see, look for the pain of the factory, and for the detail that we have the list for this. And after that, we go through with them. First, we would like to share with them that no need for the device, hardware, equipment. How can you align with the management first? Some kind like a lean automation without any automation. If you lean enough and not sufficient enough, we will consider a part of the equipment, robot automation to put in and come back with the return of investment. And if this factory is luckily under BOI regulation support, you can earn with the 100% tax exemption for automation and robotic investment. Then we go to for the stage of the procurement, design, selection, and interface the system, supply until implement and interface and integration. That is the key that we following for this concept to grow up with the customer. But the key of this, because of BOI also try to encourage the I can say like the classic factory to be smart factory. They put the campaign that you put automation, you can claim the tax. That's why most of the factory, they have their money in the pocket, but they don't know how to implement it well. We will help them. And also if you implement well, you can get tax exemption from the government. That is double privilege that they got from the government, and also they can. And the last one, that after we implemented, we have to be together with them. Okay, our concept, sometimes we have very simple one. We stay with them 3 years. First year, we together. You on site, we on site. The second year, you are on site half year. And the second half year, we'll be around your factory. Anything you call us, we go. And the third one, when the operator and the factory, they're strong enough, they can be handled for the automation. We are be around and support just only for the call. And in case that they would like to develop more for the factory 4.0 and 4.01 or 2, they can know the knowledge, know-how, and they can implement it by themselves. That's what we implemented, integrated, and interface with this.
So a very practical approach to really help them go through this phase of adopting new technologies. Funding, you mentioned tax incentives. Can you already share how the acceptance of this approach is in the market? Is it perceived like, yeah, let's do that on a broader scale, or is it only picked up by a few companies? Can you share a bit about the acceptance of that approach?
Okay, actually for the board of investment, they have like a handbook and the list of the business that can be accepted by the BOI. They have several one, a lot of the business that can apply for this. But this is depend on how can we approach and review it that the automation and robotic can apply to it. If they talk about just only decoration, no any robotic, no any automation, they cannot get this privilege from the BOI. But once we come back with the robotic automation, even digitalization, we can get this. But it depends on how, and we know how to make it done, because this is not the first step that we do. We did in the past, and not just only we have the group, we have the team, and we work close with the BOI. And BOI, actually, they are like a support. They didn't go through in the detail, but technically, another organization called Center of Robotic Excellence, they will analyze what project that you can align. And Tara also work close with the core team. So we know what exactly that, okay, we have the proposal. We know this proposal, okay, difficult to achieve for the benefit of BOI. But if we apply a little bit, we can get this. That is some kind like Tara can be like a support in the behind for the factory.
I see. Okay, thanks a lot. I see now here there are a few questions coming up in our Q&A box here, and no surprise, it's also about funding. Yeah, obviously, this plays an important role. Question to Mr. Christa, actually, because we talked about the EV sectors, the demand for electric vehicles specifically, and here's the question: how can you explain that sales growth of electric vehicles when there's no support or incentive for buyers, and also the lack of infrastructure? I think this is really about adoption of EVs on the end consumer side. Yeah, maybe can you elaborate on this, please?
Okay, thank you. But this is a very good question, I have to say. Of course, when I mentioned that the number of the electric vehicle sales in Thailand has increased, it increased from, let's say, hundreds to thousands. And we're still having in total of the accumulated registration of electric vehicle, not more than 6,000 at the moment. So basically the number increased, yes, but the total number is still very small. And it is exactly as you said, we don't have the incentive for the buyer at the moment. And this is something which is the under the task of the National EV Policy Committee to basically get together, discuss and decide what kind of the incentive that they would like to put forward for the Thailand electrification roadmap. Because you probably have heard that the government already set the target for the EV car, motorcycle, bus, even to to the ferry as well. So it is clear that they would like to see about 50% of the registration in 2030 to be zero emission vehicle or basically electric vehicle. So it means that we will reach about 2 million electric vehicle within 9 years. And with the speed of what we are seeing right now, without the demand or without the support to the end user, it is quite difficult to achieve that goal. So basically, you're right, and the National EV Policy Committee is now trying to put together some kind of the incentive support, whether it be tax or non-tax. I think we'll find out very soon, and they know that the target which we have to achieve is very high, but it is ambitious goal, and we like to try to achieve it. And of course, when talking about the infrastructure, yes, currently we have only about 2,100 public charging sockets available nationwide. That would probably be enough if you want to supply that to about a few thousand electric vehicles. But now we're talking about 2 million in 9 years times. So it means that the infrastructure would have to grow quite a lot, coming from private sector. And I know that from companies like Energy Absolute, from PTT, from the power authority like MEA, PEA, ECAT, they all now expanding the network and trying to put more of the DC quick charger out there in the public as well. So I think it's not going to be the AC normal charge that you would need to wait 3 or 4 hours until the car gets charged, but it would be a quick charger that you see more. But of course, it will come together hand in hand with the number of the electric vehicles that are available in the market.
Interesting. Yeah, sticking a bit to this topic of funding and investment, because I also see in the questions a few related ones. Maybe also to industry, Mr. Sombun, how is funding important that you basically can implement technologies?
Funding is important, yes, but the vision of the owner or the management of each company is more important. That they need to understand what they want to move to and how they want to move their factory to that level. And they need to understand also that this is a journey that is the continuous improvement, not just only one time, because some company, the owner or the management, that they think that they just invest one time and it will make them to the level of Industry 4.0, or can move them to the digitalization, can make them to the level that they expect. But actually, it's the continuous improvement that they need to improve their people, their process, and also their product. Then the investment from the company need to prepare for not only one time, but continue us to make the journey success. This is what Siemens try to explain to our customer on this kind of journey, because not only change, improve in for example, install for the robot, and they can have the full automation, but the people need to utilize robot well to understand on how the robot working and how to make their people from the worker up level to the people who can programming the robot or do the simulation, and then do the offline programming to the robot, something like that. This is what I wanted to say.
Ms. Lin, funding in Singapore is always, at least as my experience, when there is a new technology implementation, the first question, do we have funding for this? What is your experience now reflecting this to Thailand? Is there an ROI of your solutions without funding, or is that completely independent? How does that tie in?
Well, if it's just funding, I think Singapore has been very supportive on takers who want to try new technology and to try to move without being too badly affected by the pandemic. But if you're talking about the product, I think it's quite individual. So the products that we do are more on the component level. But I think if you just want to stay focused on how do we make business more resilient, I think both Singapore and Thailand, we are trying our best to support this whole technology from ground up, and sufficient chances have been given to companies big and small to try to pick up this new technology. So I think if we actively reach out to the associations and to the people who are all here in this meeting today, we should be able to push something fruitful.
Okay, thanks. Thank you very much. Now coming to a topic also way forward, and it has been also mentioned, human capital, right? It's that's definitely a critical element in this whole adoption discussion of Industry 4.0. We need people who are able to adopt those ones, to implement and to use. So I have a few questions here in the chat, in the Q&A box, which more or less go in the direction, Naya, how do we basically make sure that our labor, the skills, get more and more trained, up to speed for these new technologies? It would be interesting to hear from the panelists, on the one hand, more from the industry side, but also from R&D side. What's your understanding how the people, how the workforce is being upskilled to really make them ready for the next years to come? Maybe Dr. Löhr from the R&D side, can you share a bit how you see this?
Yes, so in the past 2 or 3 years, the Thai government has been really looking into the digital transformation. Ever since Industry 4.0 start coming into effect, and all the companies are trying more or less, like Kun Sakda or Kun Somboon or Kun Grisada said, it's all about starting with people. Management level, if they don't have the good understanding of Industry 4.0, the implementation and the transformation will face a challenge more or less early on or later on. So 2 years ago, the government has initiated what we call the Reinventing University, and then also the funding, research funding schemes overall nationwide. So everything has been changed 2 years ago. From the funding point of view, a lot of schemes has been slightly altered, and I'll share with you in just a little bit. On the university side, we are no longer just looking at the educating research R&D for frontier research or education for researchers and high school graduates. What we are trying to do now is educating everyone, starting from, they could be high school or vocational school graduates, all the way up to someone who's currently in the industry, to get them to understand the technology and be able to take the knowledge and implement it in their industry. So with that being said, the funding of the government has been altered to coincide with this kind of reinventing or revolution of our university scheme. And currently we have 3 different approaches to do this. Number 1 would be the workforce training. So a lot of fundings has been given to what we call the triple helix model from the government. So that means industries, company who are wanting to do the transformation can actually participate and send their employees to come in and train with us with no cost. The government will subsidize with all the training cost. And at the same time, the government encourage universities to partner up, for example, Siemens or a lot of the leaders in the industry to help train, because we can only help with some theoretical base, but the companies, the private sector actually has the hands-on experience. And then on the second side, also a triple helix model, but for the digital transformation of the company itself. So if the company are willing to go through this entire renovation of their manufacturing line, assembly line, besides the tax exemption benefits that they have, they could also apply for research grant. We call them the research grant, but it's really just a matching grant between private industry, 20% or up to 50%, depending on the grants. And then the government will subsidize another 50 to 80% of the funding. And the outcome, you have to demonstrate to the government that after you have applied some kind of industry 4.0 or digital transformation to your company. And that way we are hoping that with the personnel training, workforce training program, along with the digital transformation, we can really push this transformation for the overall national level. Okay.
Thank you very much. Very interesting. Mr. Sakta, how do you ensure that people are capable of adopting robots and automation and run them?
Okay, we can say we have two sides. A part of the end user side. First, we at the beginning of the project, at the beginning of the stage, that we really need to have at least one person from the factory side that they have the passion to go together with the automation first. Okay, this is the key. Without this, without the passion from the factory owner, it's quite very challenging to go through them. But okay, once they align on this, all of the technology, all of the device, all of the automation system will transfer to this guy. And also this guy will be started not just only after the operation or life. They will start at the beginning of the design, get requirement. That is take very, very long time of the whole journey for the implementation. They will know what exactly that, how can they deal with their own representative factory. And then they will know how to realize the system and automation. And after that, we have to implement together, test together, and go together. After project journey finished and live operation, this guy will have more capability to handle as a part of the project team, and will be the bridge in case that in the future something happens with very small point, some kind like the wiring was unplugged. No need from the project team, from the contractor side to be at site 400 kilometers from Bangkok to plug in and come back home. They can help, they can support for this. This is one of the important, a part of the end user side, the factory side. A part of the system integrator side, as us, we have the TARA, we have the session, we have the skill people, we have the session to have the training session for the new system integrator, for the new startup system integrator. To build them can be the level up, start from system integrator 101, automation 102, automation 201, step for this. This have to separate view according for how can we develop a people from this in automation and robotic ecosystem in Thailand.
So very dedicated and specifically, let's say, designed offers to make sure that there are really the people who can pick this up then and can run these new systems. Question with the request for a short answer, because we have 3 minutes left actually, to Mr. Somboon and Ms. Lin. How do you, I mean, one thing is to train and upskill your people, but there's also the challenge of retaining them. Can you elaborate a bit on this, or not a little bit, briefly, please? Mr. Somboon, maybe?
Yeah, for the training the people, actually the government, Thai government, they have support this, especially to the EEC, Eastern Economic Corridor, to the university, to the technical college, and also vocational school a lot. But it may be slow because the government process quite slow. But we know that they invest a lot in this. That we CMEN have worked with some universities, some technical colleagues to provide, to do the technology transfer, knowledge transfer to this university or technical colleague to serve the customer. But I think the government can do more with to the skill development, labor skill development organization that they have across the country, that I think is will help to support the manufacturer to up level of their worker. Yeah.
Thank you, Ms. Lin, really for a short answer. I'm already requested to wrap up. So can you maybe keep your answer short? Thank you very much.
Right, okay, I'll try my best. So, well, we can't stop people from joining, we can't stop people from leaving, but what we can continue to do is to foster stronger relationships with our stakeholders, for example, with your vendors. And if you are close with your vendors, and I think it should be possible to keep retraining new people, keep retraining your ex-staff or your staff have left, you need new information to be passed on and stuff like that. I think what matters to us is to ensure that synergy is always there and also maintain a good balance between human and technology. So certain things we can offload to technology, let's offload to technology. And certain things where only humans can do, let's make the best, try to keep our team and try to share information proactively. I think that's the simplest way I can try to put it.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Yeah, we are basically at the end of our session. We have several questions in this Q&A chat box. I can't answer all of them. In this case, I have a nice last question here, which can wrap up the whole session and which allows me not to give another monologue, because I think it's, we have heard it is a broad topic, it is a broad spectrum, so I will not attempt to summarize everything, but I would like every panelist to answer the following question, and then we can adjourn this session. There is the question, what score would each panelist give to the current readiness of Thai workforce in manufacturing sector for Industry 4.0 and or digital transformation? Let's say between 0 to 5, maybe also 0 is basically very low readiness of the workforce, and 5 is a very high readiness of the workforce for adopting new technologies and digital transformation. Maybe can you just give your number? Just starting maybe with, sorry, Mr. Krista, maybe let's start with you. What's your number?
I would give 2.5.
Ah, that's very diplomatic. Dr. Lur, what's your number?
I'll give it a 3.
Also fine, thank you. Mr. Zombun?
I give 2.5.
Okay, also very diplomatic. And Mr. Sakta?
I think around 3.
Okay, then last but not least, Ms. Lin, maybe a different number than 2.5 or 3?
I'm sorry, I have to stick with 3.
Okay, all right, maybe that is really the understanding, right? That seems to be an average thing. So thanks a lot for the session. It was really a pleasure and honor to moderate this. I hope we could give the audience some answers to your questions. As I said, I couldn't answer all of them, unfortunately, but thanks a lot for your participation, and see you then in the breakout session. Thank you very much. I hand over to Nupta now. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.